Failing to plan for your taxes can have real financial consequences, and in this case, thousands of dollars, and in a way you might not expect. I've got that and more coming up. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host of the Wise Money Show. I'm also one of the certified financial planners right here at Korhorn Financial Group. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. What you pay for Medicare Part B and Part D depends on your income. It depends on your income. There is no question your health insurance or protection plan is connected to the rest of your financial life. It's connected to your tax picture, yep. Connected to your cash flow picture, of course. Connected to your retirement picture, yes. Your investments and your estate planning. All 6 areas of your financial life overlap. They're intersected. That's why you need a CFP to help you analyze each of those areas, but then see how they fit together and give you synergistic advice so that you're making wise choices, right? That's the big idea. Well, let me tell you a scenario here. I was working with an individual who was divorced earlier in her career, and as part of that divorce, received some dollars outside of a retirement account, so a non-IRA, so an individual account. By the time she came to meet with us, it was just a couple years before she retired. She'd never done financial planning, but she was very frugal and had to raise a child on her own, and so worked very hard and really wanted some guidance on all 6 areas of her financial life, but really how can I get to and into retirement? Well, here's the deal. By the time we met, she was earning income and so on, and as a single individual, and her daughter was no longer dependent, so therefore, she was already in a high enough tax bracket where we needed to be really sensitive. And she hadn't done the tax planning work throughout her career to get these non-IRA dollars tucked into tax shelters. In fact, she had continued to add money over to these non-IRA dollars, even though she wasn't fully maximizing her 403B, wasn't fully maximizing her Roth IRA and the other tax shelters. That's why we say, do you have a tax shelter strategy? The last thing on her mind during her working career, during her 40s, was thinking about Medicare. Now let's fast forward. This small non-IRA that she received in the divorce, as well as the contributions that she had made to it, is now a considerable sum of money, about $500,000. Some of the investments within had lower tax consequences to make some changes, and we'd done so. But there were a couple of investments, in particular, mutual funds, that were actively managed and were very aggressive, that had enough appreciation by the time that we met. I said, now in your working career, it's not a good time for us to rebalance or make any changes. So let's use those pieces, let's keep them in place and avoid the big tax pain that it would cause, and we'll build around them. We've continued to do that because the tax consequence of making a change would result in significant taxes. Well, as long as she doesn't sell those 2 mutual funds, she's insulated from the capital gains, right? Sort of. There's 2 different types of capital gains that you could have on mutual funds, especially actively managed mutual funds. If you bought it for here, that's your cost basis, if you will, and if it's worth this, when you sell it, you'll have to report the difference between those 2 as a capital gain. As long as you've held the fund for at least 12 months, it'd be a long-term capital gain. But within the mutual fund, that mutual fund, you can't always see it, but that mutual fund owns hundreds, if not thousands of individual securities. And so within that mutual fund, you might not have sold it, but within the mutual fund, the manager, might have bought Apple stock or Microsoft or bought an investment here, and it's now worth this, and they decide to sell it. And even though when they sell it, the money stays within the mutual fund is a pass-through entity, meaning that capital gain is then distributed to the shareholders. Capital gain distributions. I've explained this before in other videos. So one thing you have control over when you choose to sell the investment, but one thing you don't have control over when the manager chooses to sell investments within the fund. You can't predict, you can't anticipate, you don't know what those capital gain distributions will be from year to year. The last time we had a really, really painful one, it was a few years ago, and her income went up significantly, and I mean $40,000 of capital gain distribution that she was not planning on, we were not planning on, and it caused her to pay more tax on her Social Security, and it created a few other consequences as well. So she's kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place, right? If she sells these actively managed funds, there's going to be a couple $100,000 of gain, and you say, well, we should all be so lucky. I know, it's a great spot to be in, but a conundrum nonetheless. A lot of capital gain that she'd need to pay taxes on, and a lot of resulting consequences, or continue to leave it as is and deal with the potential tax surprises. Because of her age, and we've talked through this, we're leaving it as is. But recently, as we were exploring her tax situation, it had one surprising to her financial consequence. Just 2 years ago, her capital gain distributions from these two actively managed mutual funds that she had no control over were so high it pushed her adjusted gross income from 2 years ago, well, a year ago, 2023, up to a level that I informed her, starting next year, you're going to pay an income-related monthly adjustment amount, a surcharge on your Medicare Part B and Part D because of this increase, because of these capital gain distributions, again, that were outside of her control. It not only created a tax burden to her that she wasn't planning for 2 years ago or last year, 2023, but it now is creating an additional consequence, an additional cost of a couple $1,000s on her Medicare premiums that she'll face in 2025. So what do? Throughout your career, even in your 30s and 40s, when Medicare is the furthest thing from your mind, you need to have a tax shelter strategy. You need to look at all 6 areas of your financial life, working with your certified financial planner, and you need to have that tax shelter strategy where you're funding as much as possible into those tax shelters so that you have dollars that won't surprise you on their impact on your tax return. If you're funding all of your tax shelters to the full extent and you still have more dollars to save outside of tax shelters, that's great. But then apply the second takeaway, and that is to use tax-friendly investments, either exchange-traded funds where have very little or because of how they're set up, almost none, although I can't say that. Capital gain distributions, where that surprise is really minimized, if not fully eliminated. And the only tax consequence, capital gain consequence, is when you choose to sell an investment that has appreciated in value. So using more tax-sensitive investments for the dollars in accounts that are not tax shelters. You've got to get proactive with your tax picture and not just think on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment, or year-by-year basis, but planning ahead for your financial future so that you don't get out there in retirement and face an unintended tax consequence that costs you thousands of dollars. Work with your certified financial planner today. Have that clarity and confidence, but also the creativity to navigate those challenges so that you pay the least amount of tax over your lifetime, if not multiple lifetimes. Work with your CFP on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or send us an email, info@korhorn.com. All right, there you have it. Go on and take your next wise step in your financial life.